were you this comfortable in your own skin, and were you always this person who is happy to connect others and happy regardless to talk to anyone regardless of their station or how they might come into play with you?
So yes, I've always been a connector, and mostly just because I've never felt like I was better than anybody, whether it was the busboy or the janitor or the maintenance person. Again, that person needs to smile and have a good day too, and be told, and it, kindness, right? Like just being kind it doesn't cost you anything. It's free, and in fact, you get a lot out of it once you implement it the right way. I got more comfortable in my skin and my disability and started to notice that, though, not only is it the fear that people have of like offending me, but also just the fear of disability itself, right? Because
Yes.
they don't want to see themselves in it. And I was that person too.
Welcome to On Board with Transparent Leadership, an Easterseals podcast. I'm Kendra Davenport, President and CEO of Easterseals, and I am here with Mark Raymond, who since our last talk, I think we did a podcast around this time last year, has joined Easterseals National Board of Directors. And I have to say that was in the cards all along. I had designs on that as soon as I met Mark. Mark is an inspiring person for a myriad of reasons. He was introduced to me by one of our CEOs, Tracy Garner from Easterseals, Louisiana. Mark is a leader, a founder, an innovator, a man of many talents, and kind of a Renaissance man. But I'll let him do his own intro because you have founded the Split Second Foundation, Mark, and I'd love for you to refresh our listeners and share with new listeners what Split Second is and what brought it about.
Yeah. Split second, if I had to put it in one word, it would be solution. And it came about from my personal experience after a diving accident, being discharged from the hospital into a community with no real tangible resources and services for people who had gone through that type of tragedy and trauma. Um, Not having someone who could be a quarterback help me figure out like the PCA care situation, help my mom and my family, and kind of like really guide us through that, the nuance of it. Um, it was born in that and has grown into just this constant solution oriented machine, solving problems for people with various disabilities, and honestly the entire disability space. So our mission is to provide comprehensive care, resources, education, and advocacy to people impacted by disability and their families, in an effort to improve quality of life and provide services and resources the best ways that we can.
I love that. I love what you do. And I love that we now have you working with us at Easterseals to do it for a broader array of people, across all disabilities across the nation. And one thing that's always struck me was how involved your mom is. And your mom became your caregiver after your accident. And we're placing a massive emphasis on caregiving because more and more people are becoming caregivers. And I think writ large, nationally, governmentally, we need to be much more aware of what that means and really start to change the way the game is played, because so many caregivers, and I know you can speak to this, do so at great expense, at great personal cost to themselves. And they'll often be the first to tell you, no, this is what I want to be doing. I wouldn't want to do anything else. But we don't compensate them. And oftentimes they leave jobs.
Yep.
And if you amortize what a caregiver really should be paid, it's it's unattainable, it's unaffordable for most people. Can you speak a little bit about that? Because your mom is sort of a force to be reckoned with.
She is. She's a force. I call her a thug, but the good kind.
I'm sure
Uh,
she likes that.
she keeps the guardrails real tight. But to your point, and it was something that I really had to open my eyes to. We are a nation of caregivers, right? And everybody kind of transitions into a caregiver. If you've got elderly parents or loved ones, it's a part of life, right? It's the part of the circle. But to your point, in providing and getting that the level of PCA care or caregiving that people with disabilities typically need to live and sustain is not usually covered, and it typically is like one of the first things that state governments want to slash in a Medicaid budget if there's a deficit, right? And we always end up like having this expansion retraction fight, and we never really get anywhere. And it's it's something that unfortunately I've seen it now for 8 years. And having a mother who's quit her job to take care of me and support me and help me build, these entities to address some of the other issues, like, has been critical. But for the families that don't have the level of support that we had, right? Like she was able to quit her job because dad could support the household and while I wasn't working and still trying to figure out life and you but like we have got to figure out what is the right advocacy approach, what's the right policy approach, because really feel like at this point PCA care should be covered by Medicare, right?
Well, you know how I feel about it. And I think, I mean, I completely agree. And I think we just need to wake up
Mhm.
nationally to the fact that this isn't just thousands of people, this is millions of people. And if we were to support caregiving, caregivers financially in a a way that's more conducive to actually making a living,
Yeah,
it really boosts our economy because then it enables people with disabilities the opportunity to work, the opportunity to get educated.
exactly.
And
And
I
it
think
reduces
we,
cost. It
yes,
reduces
yes.
the cost that the payers are paying, right? To get people out of nursing homes. Like there's a huge thing in nursing home transition and how nursing homes have poor health outcomes for people with more severe disability, right? And if somebody lived at home in community and had the right support, you would drastically reduce all of that cost. So everybody's premiums would go down. Like this isn't rocket
Well,
science.
and
It's
you
simple.
reduce their caregiving costs because when people are supported and they feel they're supported in their home, they're more mentally healthy. It's not
Exactly.
just the physical, their whole well being is improved. So the
Yep.
drain on the system for additional services is eradicated. And I know you can speak to this because I know you're a pragmatist. I feel, and we'll move away from disability into more leadership in a second. But while I have you, I just want to capitalize on this. I have felt that we really need to shift the discussion from always being support for people with disabilities is a cost to supporting people with disabilities really can aid and abet the economy. It's good for business,
Yep.
right? We empower 61 million Americans, or at
Yep.
least even if it was just a half of the number of Americans that identify as being disabled, to work, to get educated, to teach, to do whatever,
Yeah.
we unlock all that buying power. We create a new economy.
Exactly.
And I just don't think we are looking at that. Can you speak a little bit about that? Because I know you have feelings about it.
It's like the mental shift from looking backwards at life to looking forward to it, right? I'll tell you, a healthcare CEO told me, "Happy people don't go to the emergency room. Happy people don't want to be hospitalized." It is mental health, right? But I was
Wow.
running back and forth to the emergency room when in my first year, in this when I was really going through the downward spiral of the depression and hearing doctors tell me, if go to the emergency room for everything. And I'm like, okay. And
Mm,
you end up there
mm.
and that's not where anything good really happens there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But to your point, on the flip side of that, when you invest in people and enable people to participate in community and get back involved, they bring that lived experience now to every
Yes.
space that they exist in. And that's a investment that we give back that is immeasurable, right? Like, and that's how I feel we as society get better. Like I think healthcare has moved forward nominally, but there's some leaps and bounds that we could take in this space if we really get creative with providing care services for folks. And I think if the larger Medicaid, Medicare providers really put an impetus on PCA care
Mhm.
and crunching the numbers, honestly, I think if they crunch the numbers, they would find some extra profit probably
Yeah,
in
right.
providing care for people in the home opposed to, institutionalizing folks in assisted living and nursing facilities or transition housing.
Agree.
Um, so that's something I am going to work really hard on in 2025. I'll tell you that.
You said something a minute ago. You said rather than looking backward, you need to look forward.
Hmm.
And I think sometimes, because I tend to be, a cockeyed optimist, I try anyway to stay in the positive. But occasionally, you know, people will take shots at you and say, well, that's really naive.
Hmm.
You're this uber positivity really illustrates a naivete. And I think, no, I think that oh gosh, angrily oppose that notion because I
Absolutely.
think by living in the positive, by striving, and it's not possible. We all have our days, and you and I talked about that before we got on this. We all have our days when we're like,
Mhm.
what the heck,
Right.
man, give me a break. But by actively striving to think positively about not what went wrong, what's in the rear view, but rather what can I be doing to improve? What
Yep.
can I be doing to help? You it really when you shift mindsets from a negative Nancy, or like you said, happy people don't go to the emergency room. If you really think about that, that's so powerful and so true. But you are someone who I think is very comfortable with your own vulnerability. You've
Mhm.
shared so much about what you've been through, what you go through day to day with me, and yet you are one of the most optimistic people, forward thinking, progressive people I know. How do you stay that way? What fuels that, Mark?
I'll tell you again, in that first year, living in darkness and constantly thinking about, what I would be doing if I hadn't had this accident. Where would I be? Who would I be with? Uh, that was a life draining
Mhm,
mentality. And
mhm,
it was really driving me crazy. And it wasn't until I got to Sacramento where I saw people thriving with disability that
mhm,
I really shifted my thought process, and it was almost like just slowing down and simplifying it, right? Like to
mhm,
focus on problem solution, like problem, I'm disabled, I can't fix that immediately. What I can fix though is I'm unhappy and I'm not looking
mhm,
forward. I don't feel like I have purpose. How do I get purpose?
mhm,
How do I move forward with this? And how do I
mhm,
do it in a way that I will enjoy it and want to be in these spaces and places with people that might not understand me or understand, the life that I have to live. And I think once I adopted that mentality, again, like seeing the light in the tunnel, in the darkness, right? Finding my light,
mhm,
um, it just became something like I just focused on. And even now, when I have bad days, I just try to slow down, think about what is making this day bad, and how do I fix it. Whether it's I need to go outside and go take a lap around the block and get some sunlight and just clear my head, or talk to the universe. And like building organization, trying to create order in society, trying to guide society and move masses into um, what we think are good ideas, and executing them takes a lot from people like us, right? Like we give it everything. And when people don't, I think, appreciate that, it's almost like we feel like it's a shot, right? And I
yeah,
had to also
yeah.
I can't focus on how they feel about it right now because they won't know it was good for them until they're in it, you know. And to your point, like taking the shots, it's like you got to take it, let it roll off you, and just keep it moving.
I think sometimes it I don't know if it's that people are threatened by that kind of optimism or more than the optimism, the desire to just push through it.
Yeah.
My kids would tell you, Mom, you can't just push through everything. And yet I'm not a patient person. I kind of think
And
you
it's
can.
that.
If you adopt the right mindset, you can. That doesn't mean, like you said, every day is going to be a good day. You are going to have your down days. But I think if you're committed to, okay, this isn't working, let's course correct. I often say to my
Yep.
team, I would rather be moving in the wrong direction and course correct on the back end than be inert, just navel gazing or
Yep.
entracted in what we can't do or stymied by a negative response to something we did. And I know you subscribe to that. So
Oh,
talk a little bit
absolutely.
about that because you and I have had really extensive conversations when things haven't gone right or when people
Yep.
have, taken a shot at us and how you recover from that.
I'll tell you, I saw this message the other day. It said, the longer you stay on the train going in the wrong direction, the more expensive the return trip. And I was like,
Okay. Yeah.
yes, right.
Yeah.
To your point, being positive is a choice. Um, and a lot of times folks will get inundated with chaos and allow it to shift their moods and dictate how they now move forward. I'm going in with positivity and we're gonna manifest some stuff.
Oh, I love
And
it. I love that.
right, like I don't care how it happens, I don't care. But we like there's a brick wall, we gonna
Mhm,
go over it, we might have to go around it, we might have to dig under it, or we might have to just barrel right through it. But we're gonna continue to go right in the direction that we're headed. Um, especially when we know like it's the right direction.
mhm. One of
And
the
it's
things I think you and I share and have in common that it's always sort of compelled me to talk to you about things or to engage with you is your constant, it's almost to me insatiable appetite for new. For we're going to keep doing this, but we're also going to do this, and we're also going to do this. And
yeah.
yet there's an order to your thinking. And I just wonder if you could share, because I think a lot of leaders struggle with that, right? And a lot of leaders will hear from their boards of directors, stay focused. I've heard that, stay focused, don't get too many things going. And yet I feel when you pursue something new, it aids and assists what you already have going on.
Yep.
And yes, you need to play that 7-degree game, but and there is a tipping point, right? There
Yeah.
is a thing, such thing as okay, too much is going on, and you and I have talked about that too. But can you talk a little bit about what drives you? How do you come up with the ideas you do, and how do you blend everything so well?
So I think I'm a collection of my experiences working in hospitality, from being a busboy to a banquet captain, restaurant manager, uh, degrees in chemistry and physics. So critical thinking and being able to assess problems, working in TV, bringing like all of that, and then becoming this social entrepreneur who just wasn't afraid of failure, and also not afraid to try. Right, like a lot of folks, I think, get analysis paralysis. You just think and
Yes,
think and think and think, and you never take a step forward. Where the other entrepreneur who might not be half as smart as you is already 10 steps down the road, made 10 mistakes,
right.
pivoted, and figured it out. And, that's just that is like how we get better. It's the experiences. And now, this like getting into the intergovernmental affairs space. And for me, the like the RTA board was so influential in my
Can you tell listeners what that
development.
is, just so everybody's on
Yeah.
board?
So I served as the chairman for the New Orleans Regional Transit Authority. The RTA, as it is uh, endearedly called in New Orleans, administers, operates, and maintains all of the public transportation options in New Orleans. So buses, streetcars, ferries, and our paratransit service that provides services to our disabled and elderly clients. I served on that board for 6 years. I served as a chairman for 2. And in my capacity as chairman, selected and hired the most recent CEO, Lona Hankins,
Mhm.
who's brilliant in her own right, an engineer, and but was also a first-time CEO, and like helping guide that agency though, so that we provide better services, and also like getting an opportunity to see how a large organization is supposed to work, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a $200 million economic development engine
Mhm.
that needs to focus on transportation because that's the main mission. But it also drives development. It drives the economy, right? It gets
Mhm.
people to and from school, healthcare, everything. And without transportation and that level of connectivity, a lot of people can be isolated. And so that, and I joined that space specifically because paratransit was operating so inefficiently, still having
Yeah.
to call in 24 hours in advance to schedule a trip for the next day um, that they would come late for it. It was just a
Yeah.
mess.
It's
Um,
frustrating.
so now adding that to like this collection of experiences, and thinking about like how do we solve some of these more complex issues for people, in every aspect. And just again, like not being afraid to just try something, right? And even telling them like y'all can talk about this problem. And a lot of times, especially in politics, you see this, right? They'll talk about the same issue for 6 months before they try something. It's like just try it. It might work, it might not.
Yeah.
We might have to pivot. People might get mad, say you're sorry. Customer service is everything. How you
Move
talk to
forward.
people is everything. And people will be okay with you making a mistake if you acknowledge the mistake and you're kind. It's funny. If you are nice to somebody, even if they're mad, they're gonna have a hard time like being mad and mean. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes, I know
You
what you mean.
you can
I know
try.
what
And
you mean.
some people will still be mean, but for the most part, people are gonna have a different disposition, opposed to getting in like these tit for tats. That I think we like. It's almost like people are walking around with a short fuse because of the nature of society and I think
Pressure.
the pressure, the politics, and everything that has been, you know, dividing us as a people, opposed to keeping us focused on the real problems at hand. And so just again, simplifying it, thinking about the problem and solution.
I think of you as one of, I think in my network, you are one of very few people who I consider a super connector, right? And I think what I mean by that is you meet person A and your mind is already going to, how do I connect them with person B, C, D, G?
Yep.
And how do I get this group together? Or what could they influence? I've watched you operate very well with all types of people at all levels in any organization. You are comfortable in almost any situation, and you're comfortable with your disability, and your comfort, I think, allows people who might not be otherwise comfortable talking to you, comfortable with your disability. And I don't think, and you and I have talked about this, I don't think anybody intentionally is uncomfortable. I think it's the fear of the unknown. I don't want to say something that's going to upset Mark. I don't want to
Mhm.
ask a question that's going to be stupid, or, that he's going to think is, insensitive. I don't want to say the wrong thing because that might not be in the proper lexicon. How did you get this way? Were you even before your disability? And I realize that's probably a little bit of a dicey question, but
Uh,
were you this comfortable in your own skin, and were you always this person who is happy to connect others and happy regardless to talk to anyone regardless of their
yeah.
station or how they might come into play with you?
So yes, I've always been a connector, and mostly just because I've never felt like I was better than anybody, whether it was the bus boy or the janitor or the maintenance person. Again, that person needs to smile and have a good day too, and be told, and it, kindness, right? Like just being kind it doesn't cost you anything. It's free, and in fact, you get a lot out of it once you implement it the right way. I got more comfortable in my skin and my disability and started to notice that though, not only is it the fear that people have of like offending me, but also just the fear of disability itself, right?
Yes.
Because they don't want to see themselves in it. And I was that person too. Like I struggled looking in the mirror in the first year. Um, and it took me a while to like really get comfortable and see myself as attractive and as somebody who, could still move and shake and do all the things that I
Mhm,
was used to doing in the cities that I, always went to. And so after I think I got comfortable and then becoming a leader and hearing people in the community tell me that they respected my opinions and that they really loved the work that I was doing, like all of those little, it's like collecting points, right? Like
yeah,
all of that helped me get to a space where I don't care if I'm talking to the president of the United States or
mhm,
somebody who's locked up, for murder, right? Like I think people
mhm,
just need kindness, and you can't. Everybody needs to kind of just adopt a nicer approach, and that's how I've always moved, right? You get more what's that saying? You catch more flies with honey than poo poo.
mhm. Yeah. Is there anybody who today or maybe in the past is a mentor to you? I know I've asked you that question, but I asked it a year ago. So tell me today, is there anybody you derive? Because I kind of also want to know in the same vein, do you get your energy from pollinating, from
Oh,
being
absolutely.
around people? I mean, you certainly seem to thrive in any situation, in any meeting you and I have ever been in any setting. But so A, mentor, is there one?
Yep.
Is there two? Is there three? Are there people you go to get filled up and get advice, counsel? And two, do you do people revive your energy?
The answer to both of those is yes. Two of my mentors, Flozell Daniels, who was the chairman of RTA when I got to the board, was running another a foundation in Louisiana called Foundation for Louisiana, as a matter of fact. Um, just really like took me under his wing, and I quickly became the vice chair, finance chair. So we were talking, 2 3 times a week, and really like that's where I think I really learned and got an understanding of what it meant to lead from a board perspective and not from the CEO's perspective, because those are different jobs and different
Yeah,
job
very
duties.
different. Hmm.
And being focused, laser focused on setting the mission, the vision, the objectives of the organization, and making sure that the leadership, the executive leadership
Hmm.
team, was moving that forward. Flo has always been like that guy when I'm going through something, I'll call him, bounce some ideas off him. I mean, in every successful initiative I've taken on, renaming streets, he was like the first phone call. Helena Moreno, who's currently the city council president, and she's running for mayor. She's another one I lean on a good bit. Just again, very problem solution oriented. And then a third for me, and probably should have been first, but my godfather, Daryl Willis, who is currently CVP for Microsoft. I think he's basically like the CEO of their energy and resource division globally. He worked for BP for a number of years. He was the CEO of BP's Russia operations, the CEO of Angola, Africa, their biggest drilling
Hmm.
exploration.
Yep.
Seeing how he moved, and always having like his ear and his guidance has definitely helped me get comfortable um, being a leader and being okay with also like people not liking some of the things that I've done. And also
Hmm.
like, it's not always rainbows because some folks see this young guy and think he's arrogant, he's cocky, and he's doing all this
Hmm.
stuff. And what's he know? I'm senior in this. I've done this 3 4 times as long, and
Hmm.
I'm just looking to learn from everybody because I'm a student of the game and of life, and my philosophy is you never stop learning. Everybody can teach you something,
Lifelong learner. Yeah, for
you
sure.
know. And but to your point, like whenever I need my cup refilled, those are like my go tos, you know.
Mhm.
But I watch you too. Yeah, I take snippets of like of everybody. And watching our relationship and watching, because again, like Easterseals is doing the work for 100 plus years. The organizational growth, the development, the changes over time,
Mhm.
the pivots that it's had to make, and now you've been in your position what, almost 3 years?
3 years and another 8 weeks or so. Yeah. Be going into my
And
fourth year.
so really, like, the energy that you have to come in with to guide an organization like this and get a group of people moving and rowing in the same direction is a challenge, and you do it gracefully. Um,
All
it's
the
fun.
time, Mark.
Well,
I
we're not always
stumble.
gonna be
I
graceful, right?
stumble quite a bit.
But
I'm like you
watching
though.
how
I'm
you
learning all the time.
watching how you managed the room at the national summit, it was amazing. It wasn't scripted,
Thank
it was
you.
heartfelt. Because you care, and I think, like, a lot of folks forget the duty of care
Mhm.
as they move in these spaces, and so I'm always inspired when I meet people like you, and that's why we gravitate towards each other.
I think we gravitate to each other for a whole host of reasons. We can't go into all of them today, but one of them is that I think we just really like being around people. And it's about, you
Yep.
know, meeting them, learning from them. You've touched on a lot of it today. It's accessing mentorship, it's
Yeah.
constantly being committed to learning new things and to being okay with being told you're wrong.
Right.
You're wrong. You don't have it right. Well, teach me. You know, I think it took me a while. And no one likes constructive criticism. No one likes criticism, but even constructive, I was never really good at it. Still working on that. But I think as I get older, I realize, if you've got a better way, you can build a better mousetrap. You can show me how I
Yeah.
can be better at something. I'm all in. Tell me. You got to tell me. And I think it was very humbling coming into this job. I grossly underestimated how challenging it was going to be to win the trust of the 70 affiliates, 70 CEOs
Yep.
that make up the Easterseals national network, and b how difficult it was going to be to get them rowing in the same direction, because they say it all the time and it sounds trite sometimes when I say, we're stronger together. We are, though.
Yeah.
We are a massive voice. We're the largest provider of services and supports for people with disabilities. And yet, I think there's so much more we can be doing. And I think there's an evolution that's taking place now. And it really is being led by people like you who are coming to the table with new ideas and new spin on how do we approach legislators. And that's why I love that for you, that's an area, and I know your family's been political for many years, and that's a skill set you bring, and I think you draw from your ancestors, engagement in politics in New Orleans, which is fascinating in and of itself. There's probably a book in that, Mark. But I think that you know the coming year, 2025, going to be fascinating to see what happens in Washington.
Yeah.
Definitely going to be different. The more synthesized, I think, the disability world's voice is, the better off we're going to be. And and you and I have talked about this, the disability community doesn't play well together, right? It's
Right.
not that I think there's not animosity, there's no malfeasance, there's no discord. It's just everybody is siloed.
Right.
So one disability speaks for one disability, and then another disability rep speaks for them, and as a whole, I think it's very difficult. And that's been another thing. I think I underestimated how challenging it was going to be to bring key players in the disability space together to make that chorus louder in
Yes.
Washington. Can you talk a little bit about how you feel about that? Because you, in almost in record time, have garnered support, have attracted attention, have engaged with legislators. You're doing all the right things, and yet you were totally open to working with Easterseals. You didn't for a second think, if you did, you didn't say it, and I don't think you did, oh, I don't know if I want to engage with them. I don't want them to take my piece of the
Never.
pie, or I don't want them. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
I didn't even
there was
blink.
no threat. You were more like arms wide open, like, let's go, let's work together. How can we
Yeah.
help each other? Can you talk a little bit about that?
When there are when there's that collaboration, that unified chorus, um, you get to the results faster, right?
Yeah, you do.
And I've been really intentional about all of the relationships, whether it was joining Centene's
Yeah,
National
yeah.
Disability Advisory Council to, you know, be at that table, to
Mhm,
National Easterseals. I was really making a push to get on the National Council on Disability. We'll see what the new administration is going to do, but for that very focus of bringing everybody to the
yeah.
table, and really to the party. Nobody wants to miss a party. They'll miss a meeting. They don't want to miss the party. But to get everybody dancing and singing in the same,
Mhm,
in unison. And to your point, right? Like you've got all of these massive disability entities, Nickel, NADD, you've got the
mhm.
developmental disability
Yep.
community, the Centers for Independent Living across the country, that have, to your point, all kind of just done their own things, and instead of all been partners, right? And providing this collaborative network of services that could be driven differently. Because
Mhm,
now when we go to the state capitol as a unit, they don't really want to mess with us because we touch 1 million people, right?
mhm.
And the larger that network grows, because everybody's going to be impacted by disability at some point
Agree.
and need these services, right? Whether it's, having a child with the situation, or having a situation yourself, or a parent or loved one.
Mhm,
And that message to me has always been so strong, which was why we named the organization Split Second Foundation.
mhm.
Anybody's life can change in a split second. Who can
So
argue
true.
with that, right? Like that to me is a immediate kind of icebreaker unifier.
Mhm,
And in all of these situations, and what I've learned about all of these disability organizations, we all pretty much want the same things, right? Like
mhm.
we all talk about the same stuff. We just need to talk about it the same time with all
Yeah,
these legislators.
yeah.
And when I think about too, like marketing and advocacy campaigns, and how are we messaging to the masses that this is the focus, right? This is what we want to accomplish right now, but we've got a list of things that are next. And in large part, it, you see the statistics on how much we spend on healthcare and how poor our health outcomes are in
Are.
comparisons to the rest
How
of the
little
world.
we have to show for it. Yeah.
And it's like, just in looking at that big picture, you see something is broken. I'm just like,
Mhm,
we need to all come in and say, okay, here's what we want to address first, right?
mhm,
And PCA care to me is the the biggest and lowest hanging fruit.
mhm,
We get that
mhm.
right. And that's every disability is on the same page with that. And the caregiver population, to your point, is the largest population affected by disability. It it doesn't matter what religion you
It
are, what
impacts
creed,
entire
what skin
families.
color, doesn't matter.
Yep. You're right. You're right. And in that sense, I think disability is unifying
It
because
is.
it does impact everybody. Talk about, I know we're gonna try and start wrapping this up, but I can't, I have so many other questions for you. What's next on your list? And do you think d- I think I know the question the answer to this question, but do you think internationally
Yeah.
does that enter your vision? Because I know you have a bold vision for what you do. What's next? What's on your
I
list, and where do
I
you
got
want to
a
take this?
whoo. Okay. Next for split second is the expansion, and growing, and really figuring out like where we fit, either as a community care organization or
Mhm,
healthcare quasi healthcare provider.
mhm,
I really want to figure that space out, but in a way that still serves community in the way that we do. Because I feel like, again, healthcare is kind of sterile and a little stale. You said something about Easter Seals, um, that really made me think about this too. Like, you came in and had to bring fresh energy to something that might have also been complacent, and figure out what the sparks were going to be to catalyze
mhm,
people to move and really get engaged. And I'm constantly thinking about what split second needs to do in a state like Louisiana, which is
mhm,
last in the nation in health outcomes. in general, but also lasting health outcomes for families impacted by disability, and really move some of these folks forward in their thinking
Mhm.
about disability. And I know, like, there's no substitute for presence, right? So a lot of times it's gonna require me to go sit down and talk with, legislators that
Mhm.
I might not agree with on everything. We might not agree with, going to number two big one is spending a lot of time in DC and working with you with our nation's leaders to figure out how we also move them in the right direction, and are constantly the squeaky wheel, right? I think that is being in DC to me too is also like it feels majestic. Like it has a presence and a gravitas that you just feel like you can do it. Like if they built that building, I know whatever I'm trying to do, we could do it, right?
Mhm.
But also working on a documentary like we talked about. Like I'm really excited to share my journey, but I want a huge part of that, whether it's a documentary or a docu-series, to be forward thinking about things that we're either hoping to accomplish in the short term, medium term, and long term. Policy initiatives, right? Like again, being that squeaky wheel and trying to figure out how best I can leverage my presence and personality to get people more aligned with a better tomorrow.
Mhm. You you said something, and we are talking a lot about manifesting here at Easter Seals. You mentioned the word manifest early on in our conversation, and I have to say, it came manifesting positivity, manifesting success came to me really through my youngest. I'm a very faithful, devoted Catholic. So I pray a lot, but I don't necessarily manifest. And my youngest said, "Mom, you can't say negative things like that. You got to manifest your success. You got to envision it." And the more
Yeah.
she said that to me, the more I started to think she's right. She has something there. So you said something else when you were talking about your godfather, and he is your mentor, and you said he worked for um, mining company in Angola. So I'm going to manifest right now. You dodged the question of where you want to take split second and whether you'll go international. I know you don't want to add that probably to your
Oh,
plate right now, but I'm going
definitely
to
do.
manifest this because some of the work I did in Africa was the most meaningful in my life, regardless of the country, whether it was Liberia, Ghana, Nigeria, it didn't matter. Um, and when I think of disability on the continent, I think that is one place on the planet that could use Easter seals.
Yeah.
Could we could expand to Africa? We could do amazing work, and we could do that in tandem.
Let's do
So
it.
manifest that, and maybe this time next year we do our third podcast, and we'll have some traction there. Whether it's Africa, whether it's Central America, South America, Asia, I don't care. I just feel that disability globally needs more attention.
Yes.
And there are so many things that we take for granted, even here in the United States, that we do. We
Yep.
have gotten some things right around disability that we could help bring to other countries. And I think you and I could do that. So hold that thought and go back to the question. Maybe I'll let you answer for yourself. Do you see yourself working internationally in time besides working with me? Because we're going to work internationally, you and I, but
So the answer is yes, and ironically, I've already had some of those conversations with some folks at the United Nations, and again, my godfather with Microsoft, his team, and I lose sight that he's like a world leader, because Microsoft is, of course, the biggest company in the world, or one of the biggest companies, and his team is multinational. So meeting them and folks from Singapore, India, Asia, Seattle, all over the world, who also planted that seed, and they're like, Mark, the message that and the brand that Split Second represents is hope, is um, resilience. People need that everywhere. People need that message. Just like you identify Red Bull with wings, um, and it is manifesting that, right? Like it takes
Mhm.
a real spiritual intensity to, I think, deliver some of the things that have happened. But I'll tell you, about a year ago, um, I was rolling around my neighborhood. I was having a bad day, and there's a park about a block away, right next to the lake. And all of this is right, like my accident happened right on the other side of this park, very close to home. And I went over there, and I'm Catholic too. I was talking to God, and I was just like, God, if some of these things don't happen, I'm not going to be able to continue doing this. And I know that this is the work that I need to do. And it's like every time it looked like it was going to crash or fail, a check came, or we got an approval, or I mean, all the way into like buying the building. We put the building under contract and put a $10,000 deposit down. We had no idea. I had no idea where we were going to get the money from. I just knew that it was the right building and that I needed to take that risk to pursue it, and we would
Mhm.
find the money, right? Like if money is the problem, we can find some money. But it's always been like I've led like that. And some people will tell you, that's a risky way to lead, that's a risky way to run a business. Um, the most successful people I know are people who've taken big risks and
Mhm.
just really fought and clawed to make it happen. So when I think about Split Second and Easterseals and the opportunity that is international to help more people, it's a definite yes for me.
Love that. There's a lot of manifesting in there.
Oh, it's gonna happen.
A lot
We
of manifesting.
we gonna go pray on the lawn at the front of the White House.
I'm there too. I'm there too. We
So it'll be
and
interesting too to see like NCD's approach moving forward, and
Mhm.
how like this past administration has got a lot done. I think you
National
probably
Council
saw.
on Disability for anybody who's
Oh, I'm
wondering.
sorry. Yeah,
Yep.
keep tossing around the alphabet
No,
soup.
it's
Yeah.
okay. It's okay.
Um, but like there's been some really good things that came out of this past administration. The Airport Transportation Act that Pete just rolled out for
Absolutely.
people with
You saw
disabilities.
that announcement just this week. Secretary of
Incredible.
Transportation Pete Buttigieg has really outlined some very significant protections for people with disabilities in air travel. So we are making progress there, and that's a collective effort.
Yeah.
We see it. We see it. So
Paving the way.
we yeah, we are. We like to end every episode, every one of these podcasts with an Ask Me Anything segment, so stick around for that. But I want to ask you just one more question that I ask everybody because everybody knows I read constantly. I'm a voracious reader, and I love to know what other people are reading. So is there anything you're reading now or that you've read recently that you want to share? Can be for pleasure or can be something helpful.
There is. I'm actually reading a few books right now. I try to keep a couple just rolling. The Changing World Order by Ray Dalio. I'm about halfway through that.
Hedge
Uh,
fund guy.
Hedge fund
Okay.
guy. Yep. Catching Up to Crypto. Great read.
Oh, there you go again with your
Catching Up
digital
to Crypto.
currency.
It's like one of those things that's going to happen whether people like it or not. And a lot of folks, here's another philosophy of mine. A lot of times we're either a catalyst of something or a casualty of it, and I feel like
That's
crypto
the
is going to be
truth.
one of those things, right? Like
It's the
folks thought
truth.
Bitcoin was not a thing, and now it's over $100,000. You got BlackRock, you know, and all of the big hedge funds with ETFs. Going back to my books though, here's my last one, and this is a fun one. Origin by Dan Brown.
Hmm. Okay.
Great book about AI and the future of AI in society. Like I would recommend folks read it twice.
Read it twice. That's high praise. Okay.
Read it twice. And
All
read
right.
the last chapter a few times.
Okay.
The last chapter is
Okay.
just like, okay, yeah, I can see that. Right? Like, but the one of the premises, and I'll just drop this little Easter egg. Uh, the AI had gotten so good that it could retrace basically the history of the world, of the universe, and like retraced the evolution of humans and like all of it and spit it back out, and then also had could predict elements of the future and
Oh,
how we're moving
wow.
more into like bionics and the merging of technology and biology. Um, it's fascinating, especially for someone who is disabled and very interested in research and up and coming treatments. You know, I'm always paying attention to stem cell research and what the Miami Project's doing. And oh, Christopher, this isn't a book recommendation, but I think everybody should watch Christopher Reeve's
Christopher Reeves.
documentary.
Hmm. Yeah.
Great,
Powerful,
powerful,
powerful, great guy.
innovative. And when I think about somebody who is like literally the epitome of positivity and manifestation, you know, eh,
At a
like,
time, remember, when disability wasn't even mentioned.
yeah,
I mean, I think our progress in the disability world and getting the rest of the world, the non disabled world, to better understand what disability is and isn't, um, really, I think Christopher Reeves did a world of good and catapulted our way of thinking, really changed it for the better. I mean, there are some iconic people like him who have helped move the proverbial needle in terms
yeah.
of disability. So yeah, I've seen it and I would see it again, and that's good advice. I might do that while I'm on my little
To your
Christmas
point,
break.
the ADA was 5 years old when he had his accident. And who, I mean, I hate to say it like this, but who better than Superman?
The Superman.
You
Mhm.
know, uh, literally like the guiding light. And so a lot of times too, when I was down, or I would think about other people whose situations were worse than mine. Right, like
Mhm.
everybody's situation is variable. Um, Mine is I have a good life.
Mhm.
I live a good
You sure
life.
do. You sure do. I love this. I love this conversation. Love talking to you. Love seeing you. Love drawing from your energy, man. So thank you. Thank you for your time, Mark. Thank you for your candor and your honesty. We're really fortunate to know you. I mean, Easter Seals writ large, and to have drawn you in so that we can work together at the national level. But
Twist my arm.
I'll see you soon in New Orleans, my friend. And between now and then, just just stay well. And thank
Well,
you
I am
so much.
equally as grateful for you and your leadership and Easter Seals, and looking forward to the work that we'll do over the next few years. A lot of folks look forward to the championship. I look forward to going to practice. I like the journey.
Well said. Okay, so the Ask Me Anything question today is, how do you find strength to lead through challenging times, especially when you are experiencing personal obstacles? Always difficult to balance your personal and your professional life. And that's why in mine, they blur. The lines blur between personal and professional. And I know there's a whole school of thought that says, no, you don't mix business with pleasure, you don't mix personal with professional. I think in a leadership role, where you are the CEO, as I am, of a large NGO like Easter Seals, it is almost impossible to maintain really well defined boundaries between personal and professional. And I've always erred on the side of not maintaining those boundaries, not doing anything inappropriate, but rather having many of the people with whom I work become more than just professional colleagues, they become friends. And that's because you're doing work that's impactful. You share the same mindset, you share the same vision, you work to support the same mission. It's hard not to like people that are like minded. And if you enjoy what you're doing and you enjoy your work, then you tend to enjoy the people you're working with. And so it's natural, I think, that relationships begin and are fostered and cultivated. And that helps through the difficult times. It helps when the people with whom you work know you. They know enough about your family, your personal life, what you might be experiencing if you're caring for a loved one who's sick, if one of your children is going through something, if there's an issue with your spouse or partner. And that knowledge helps people be empathetic. It helps them give you a little grace when you need it. It also helps if you're just a good person and you try to be kind and empathetic and compassionate to others, even as a leader. Um, it can be challenging. There have been times when I've been neck deep in work, and work is, you know, careening, right? There's so much going on, and had to deal with a personal issue that's draining emotionally. I know a lot of women who find the balance between motherhood and marriage and having a high powered career very, very difficult to strike. And I've had people tell me it's impossible. It's impossible to do both. I'm living proof it is not impossible. Does your personal life suffer sometimes because of work and vice versa? Yes. Yes. We're human. You know, there are times when you cannot devote 100% of your attention to work, and yet work needs you if you're in a leadership position to be at that 100% capacity more often than not. Similarly, we ask a lot of the people we love. If we're in a leadership position, we ask for their patience without even verbally asking. We know to do the jobs we're doing, to take on a leadership role, you're going to need some grace from the people around you. And there are times when your personal life definitely suffers, when you are not giving 100% of your time or attention to the people you love when they may need it most because work is diverting that attention. I think you do the best you can. You do the best you can, and you rely on the things that help keep you balanced when you're experiencing a particular challenge in your personal life. Maybe that's prayer, maybe it's exercise, maybe it's meditation, maybe it's talking with a therapist, maybe it's being part of a support group. It's different. That looks different for everyone. For me, it's making time to do the things that I've thoroughly enjoyed doing, even in the face of really strenuous professional activity. And I don't mean physically strenuous, I mean mentally tasking. You know, sometimes it's physical if you're traveling a lot. But I try very hard to make my weekends my weekends. And while work does creep into weekends, I often do things like paint or ride my horses or just do what I call animal husbandry, you know, take care of my animals, spend time with my children if I'm really fortunate and they're around, or my husband, and where we're doing things we like hiking or walking on the dirt roads that surround us, you know, around our home in Virginia, or if we're shopping and just really enjoying all that Chicago has to offer. Taking that time and recognizing that you need that time. You know, just having spoken with Mark Raymond on the podcast, he agreed. You know, you need to sometimes take a mental beat and refill yourself so that you can tackle the challenges when they come at you full force, you know, so you have the energy. So I think it's about balance. I think it's about knowing your priorities and your boundaries. If you you know, those are important to you, and adhering to them, and to consistently replenishing what keeps you going, replenishing the source of energy you need to address big challenges by, you know, as I said, speaking with others, praying, meditating, exercising, doing some other activity that really fills your cup. Easterseals empowers people with disabilities and their families to be full and equal participants in their communities and within society. Easterseals is where everyone can feel welcomed and people know that they aren't judged, but treated with the dignity that they deserve. Each day, we provide life-changing services nationwide and advocate for policies that improve quality of life. From employment to housing services to job training, childcare and respite care, adult day programs, and so much more, Easterseals is making a profound impact in thousands of communities every day. You can learn more by visiting Easterseals.com. That concludes our episode. Thank you so much for listening. If you like what you heard, be sure to write a review, like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to join us in the next episode as we discuss how we can all get on board with transparent leadership.